welcome to Jolineknitsalot. This is my show about knitting and crafting and the things I get up to here in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. How have you been? It's been quite the time here in Alberta. You may not follow politics here in Alberta if you're not from here, but we had a big teacher strike, which I think maybe I alluded to in the last few episodes. The teachers were on strike for 3 weeks, just over 3 weeks. And a couple of the big things that they were really fighting for was a cap on class sizes. Right now, Alberta schools have no cap on their class sizes. And in some places, there are over 40 kids in a classroom. And dealing with complexity in the classroom. So having more supports for teachers who are dealing with students who just need more help. Maybe they need one-on-one help. Maybe they have behavioral issues. Maybe they have health issues. But students in our public school systems deserve to be supported in the way that is right for them. And so that's what the teachers are fighting for. The government mandated them back to work in violation of their chartered rights. And so now other unions are talking about striking as well, and there's talk of a general strike, which means anyone in a union may be called to strike to oppose the actions of our government. So it's been a time. It's been stressful, partly because I have family members who are teachers who I care about and I support, and partly because my youngest daughter's in grade 12, and so I obviously want what's best for her too. So it's been a lot. It's been weighing on a lot of people's minds. The teachers were mandated back to work, which means the government is forcing them to go back to work. So that started on Wednesday, and so we're just sort of in a period of time where we're figuring out what our new normal is, with our younger daughter back in school, which is good, but with content to catch up on. And so I'm happy that my daughter's back in school and learning, but I'm frustrated about how it all came about, and that the teachers in the school systems are really no better off than they were before the strike started. So I know that we're not the only people in the world going through some really strange and frustrating political times, and I hope wherever you are safe and you have the supports and the things that you need to be safe and to be well until things improve. So I'm thinking about you, I'm thinking about us, and I'm hoping that somehow we can get through this and we can get to a point where people in society, in schools, teachers, and other people who are working unionized jobs, or just jobs in general, can get the supports that they need to be well and to do their job well. So on that note, let's talk a little bit about knitting, because oftentimes when we're going through stressful political times, personal times, health, anything, our crafts are things that can get us through. They are a comfort when things are difficult, and they are a distraction. And they are also a sense of accomplishment when things are feeling like they're hopeless. So let's talk about crafting. I don't know if you noticed, but I am wearing a new sweater and it's red. Red has been the color for me lately, and I don't know why, but it's just been exciting me lately. I finished my fancy pullover with some changes. This is a free pattern by the Lamb & Kid, and it uses their yarn called Big Birdie. Big Birdie is an Aran weight circa alpaca and silk blend. It's a raglan sweater, top down. Let me tell you about some of the differences that I made, and then I'll show you how it looks overall. So this is a top down sweater, and you're supposed to cast on here at the neckline and then work some ribbing and then continue the sweater. I didn't. I cast on here and just started in stockinette and worked down through a portion of the raglan, and then I went back up here and I picked up stitches to do the neckline again. Partly because I wasn't sure how I was going to do the neckline. I didn't really like the way it is in the pattern, and my change is very minimal. So what I ended up doing was picking up the same number of stitches that the pattern recommends, and I did a knit 2 purl 2 instead of a knit 3 purl 1. The reason I'm talking about this, I guess, quite freely is that this is a free pattern, and so you have access to this information just as well as I do. So I did a knit 2 purl 2 rib at the neck, and I only did about maybe an inch, and then I did an Italian sewn bind off. I wanted more of a crew neck at the neck. I didn't want anything standing up. I just wanted this to feel like a sweatshirt. So that's how I started. I wasn't really sure what size to make because the options of sizes didn't really fit where I wanted to be. I wanted it to be oversized, but not too oversized. I'm a little bit of a princess maybe that way. So originally when I started, I had started with the needle recommended. I ended up going down a needle size to get gauge. And I actually went down a size as well. I was originally going to knit the 46 inch, but it was just looking really big. So I went with the 42 inch. Those were the options I had on a smaller needle. So I used a 5mm needle. And then when I got to the armpits, I realized it would not be hard to add some extra stitches here under the arm, just to add a little bit more room, to make it a roomier and more comfy sweater. So I think I added 2 stitches here and 2 stitches here, which gave me an extra inch. Is that what I did? Now I can't even remember. I did. Anyway, if you want to do this, you could add stitches easily under the armpits. When you separate the arms and the body. Now, yeah, I'm pretty sure I added 2 stitches on either side, and that gave me an extra inch overall. Then I just knit straight down. I knitted a bit longer than the pattern recommended because I wasn't looking for a crop sweater. I wanted something that was cozy and like a sweatshirt for me. Then at the bottom hem, I did another 2x2 ribbing to match and Italian sewn bind off. I did the sleeves as written, but I picked up those 2 extra stitches when I was picking up stitches. And then on the first round of the sleeve, I decreased them away. So I had the right amount of stitches for, I guess, the size I was going for. Some modification of the size I was going for. And then at the sleeves, again, I did a 2x2 rib with an Italian sewn bind off. And this is what it looks like. Ta-da! It's super cozy. It feels like how I wanted it to feel. Like it feels just like a cozy sweatshirt. It's the length I wanted. Like I wanted it to hit below or at my hips, definitely lower than my waist, and I feel like it does. And the color is fun. Let me tell you about yarn management. I did all of the top of the sweater just as is. I just used 1 ball because the rate of change of the stitch count was so rapid. You're increasing 8 stitches every other round. And so I was pretty confident I wouldn't get too much pooling, and I didn't. I mean, there are light bits in the yarn. Those were going to come out regardless, but I don't have weird pools. Then when I got to the underarm, I started doing helical knitting. So, sorry, let me show you. I started doing helical knitting at the underarm, and you can see, I mean, there is some variegation in the yarn, but I don't think that it is super obvious or super pooly. Plus I have some bright lights on me right now, and so that kind of brings out that contrast. It looks more contrasty on camera than it does in real life. Then for the sleeves, I just knit. I did not alternate for the sleeves. And partly that's because, again, your stitch count is changing quite rapidly as you knit down the sleeve. And the other thing I find, if I were to do helical knitting on a sleeve, the thing that would mess me up, or I'd have to find a way around it, is when you do your decreases. At some point, your helical knitting, when you're switching balls of yarn, that's going to happen where you're having your decrease round. And so how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that? Do you do helical knitting on your sleeves? And if you do, how do you manage the decreases at the underarm? Comment please below. I would really love to know. But anyway, overall, it's a very cozy sweater. It's a heavier weight of yarn than I would normally use. But I don't plan on making lots of these like really heavy, cozy kind of sweatshirty sweaters. But this one really fits the bill. Like I just think it's very warm. It's super cozy. And I think for the winter months, it's going to be great. Is there anything else I wanted to tell you? Oh, yes. I used 4 balls plus 15 grams of my 5th ball. So I have 85 grams left of my 5th ball. If you wanted to make this sweater in my sort of adjusted size, I guess, because I did add stitches for the body part and I did knit it longer. You could probably do it in 4 balls, the 42-inch size. I would just be aware that you could do what I sometimes like to do, and that's knit the yoke, knit a little bit of the body, and then switch and do the sleeves. And then all the yarn you have left is for the body, and then the body length will be what the body length will be. That gives you a little bit more leeway, and maybe will be less stressful than if you were trying to knit the body and then make sure that you had enough to have 2 sleeves that were exactly the same. So that's what I do, and this is my fancy sweater. It is a great pattern. I did modify it. The big modifications for me happen here at the neckline. The neckline that I did, I'm super happy with. I did do the original one, was a knit 3 purl one, and it wasn't for me. It stood up a little bit too much, and that's not the look I was going for. So I'm really happy with how this one turned out, and it is super cozy. It will be interesting to see how much fluff I end up with on my t-shirt that I'm wearing underneath, how much this yarn sheds. But for right now, it's super cozy, and I'm really happy with it. Now, this episode, I have quite a few finished objects to share with you. I hope that's okay. I hope you don't mind. Not all of them are red, but the next one is I knit up a Sophie scarf. I had picked up some yarn this summer. I had this like weird obsession with red. So I picked up this red yarn. It was Tuku fingering. No, it wasn't Tuku. It was John Arbin Exmoor sock, and it was red. I had 2 balls of them, which meant I had 400 meters. And so I thought I would knit up a Sophie scarf. And then I thought, well, wouldn't it be nice if it was a little bit fluffy? I don't often knit like 2 yarns held together, like a plain yarn and a fluffy yarn. That's not something that I commonly do. But I thought for this scarf that might be fun. So I picked up some red Surrey alpaca silk yarn from my local yarn shop, the Fiber Nook. This is a Fiber Spates Cumulus, and I picked up 3 balls of that. I do have a bit of the Cumulus left over and a very small nugget of my sock yarn. My plan was just to start knitting a Sophie shawl, not the scarf, not the little scarf, but a shawl, which is the bigger version. I basically it's the same thing, I think, more or less. I just started at one end and I knit until I was I knit until I'd used up almost all of my first ball of yarn, and then I started decreasing to make sure I had enough to get to the end. And I did. I had a very small nugget left over. And this is the Sophie shawl that I finished. Ta-da! It's quite long. Really, if you had, I guess, 400 meters of a DK weight, that would be about what this is. And I'm not sure I'm not sure if it's going to be for me or if it's going to be a gift. I feel a little bit like Snoopy. But this is it's a great pattern and it's a great shape. I really like it. But again, I'm not sure if it's going to be for me or for somebody else, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. It kind of scratched an itch. I was really sort of like wanting to make a little scarf, which turned into a bigger scarf than I was initially planning. But I really quite like it. The color, it was fun to play with the colors because the Exmoor sock that I had bought was quite bright, and the Surrey alpaca really tones it down, but I think maybe you can see in the light the difference between the two. It kind of gives it a real depth of color. And so that little Sophie shawl, in this case, is off my needles. I do think at some point I will be knitting myself a little one for around my neck. I don't know if it'll be in red or not. Wait and see. And I have made these before, and I really like them. So this is my Sophie shawl. Again, I think this might be a gift, but time will tell. And I think that's all the red things that I have knitted in the last couple weeks. What I did want to show you though was a pattern that I had finished quite some time ago, and it's only just recently been released, and I'm really happy to share it with you. I was contacted, maybe in August? Yeah, I think August. And asked if I wanted to take part in a test knit for some dog sweaters. This is a pattern by Stephen West. He's put out a whole collection of puppy sweaters, and I had test knit a puppy sweater for him before. It was a brioche knit one that I made for Blue in blue colors, and boy, he wears that a lot. In the wintertime here in Edmonton, it can get quite cold, and we put sweaters on Blue when it gets really cold. I'm not convinced he needs it. He seems to love the snow. He will dive in. And if it's really too cold for him, we don't last outside very long, regardless of whether he has a sweater on or not. It's just not safe for him to be outside for too long. But I do like to have sweaters to layer on him if it is getting cold. And he doesn't seem to mind wearing them. So I picked the Pierre pup sweater, which is based on a shawl, a hat, and a full-size sweater. And this is what it looks like. I used some Cascade 220 superwash, which is, it's listed as a worsted weight, but really it knits up closer to a DK weight. And this pattern was written for DK weight. Because it's superwash, I really wanted to use it. I wanted something that would be very durable and easy to take care of for my lowrider dog. And then having said that, when I cast on, I actually got gauge. It was terrific. So this is what the back side of the sweater looks like. The Pierre sweater, or the Pierre collection, is really sort of a Gansey type sweater using a lot of pattern elements using knits and purls. So there's these like triangles here. There are these sort of garter ridges amidst some stockinette. There is seed stitched, which is a very classic sort of Gansey pattern, and then this twisted rib, and then the whole thing just repeats. The way that these sweaters are constructed seem to fit Blue very nicely. Let me just show you from the side. You can see that it's got like tiny little legs, much like my little corgi. Really, the leg is just some ribbing, and they're situated more towards the front, just like Blue's legs are, anatomically speaking. And then there are some short rows in the ribbing at the back to extend the back side of the sweater and make sure that the front of it doesn't go too low, particularly for male dogs. You don't want them peeing on the sweater that you made. Fortunately for me, I used the previous sweater that I made for Blue. I used the measurements for that to make sure that this sweater would fit him well, and it does. So just to give you an idea of what those short rows look like on this side. So you can see this is his belly. So it does come up quite a bit higher, and then you use short rows to make it longer to cover more of his back. Let me show you some pictures of what this looks like on Sweet Little Blue. He doesn't seem to mind wearing sweaters, which is really great. And he did make a very lovely model, but he does require snacks. So as long as he is getting treats, he is happy to model for you as much as you like. And don't run out of treats, because then he's done. So that's the Pierre pup sweater. It's a pattern written by Stephen West. He has many sizes for doggos sweaters, and the size is determined by the chest circumference of the dog. And Blue, I think I made the 24-inch. Corgis are quite not broad chested, but they're like the size of a medium dog. They just have shorter legs. So he did require sort of a medium-ish size, and it did in the end fit him very, very nicely. And I think I would recommend that absolutely. If you're going to knit for your dog, measure around the chest. The other measurement that is helpful is measuring around the neck to make sure that it would fit over their heads and that it's comfortable. And I think that there are quite a few people test knitting Stephen West's dog pattern, so he's got a really good sense of the proportions required for a dog. Anyway, I would absolutely recommend the Pierre pup sweater. It was a fun knit. The yarn, I think, is going to be good for this purpose. And I used maybe a skein and a half, so it wasn't that much. And also Blue has a new sweater for his fall wardrobe as well. I have two more finished objects to share with you. The first one is my friend Numpkin. Here he is. Numpkin was a mystery knit-along hosted by Imagined Landscapes. There he is. And there were two versions of this pattern that you could knit. One was Numpkin, who is a sweet little pumpkin-shaped gnome kind of guy. And the other was Nettle, who was a similar shape with some small differences that make her look a little bit more witchy. She's got some curly hair. She's got a slightly different hat. But I enjoyed knitting this so much. Every few days you get a little bit of the pattern. So I think we started with the legs, which I was excited about because I have been wanting to knit a gnome that has these cute little feet. So we started with the legs, and then we started the top of the hat. For Numpkin, it really is quite reminiscent of a stalk of a pumpkin. And then you work your way down through the hat, you make the little brim, and then you knit the pumpkin body itself. There's a trick to making the ribs of the pumpkin a little bit more poochy and stand out, and then you just seam them all together. So he was a very fun little project. Every few days getting a small piece of the pattern. None of the pieces were intimidating or especially difficult to knit. And with every technique that you were knitting, Sarah Shira, who is the designer of these gnomes, provides you with really helpful videos so that you know exactly what you're doing. And now this little guy is going to go sit with my first mystery gnome, who is very mushroom themed, and look after my yarn. So this is Numpkin. He's very sweet. He was a very fun knit and not very difficult. The only thing is at times, because you're knitting something that is quite small, the number of stitches on your needles can be a little fiddly. I like to use DPNs. That's what I'm comfortable with. Sometimes I think some of these techniques may be a little bit easier with the magic loop, but you're never doing anything for that long. So even if it is a little bit fussy, like I would say the legs maybe, because it's a small circumference and you're going round and round, you're not really doing it for that long, so it wasn't terrible. I like to sit Numpkin with his legs crossed. I think it just makes him look a little bit cozier. And he was finished just shortly after my last episode. He didn't take very much yarn, and the yarn I used was a kit from Borealis Fibers, who was actually the supplier of yarn for the original. So this is the original colors for Numpkin, and it's like a really pretty tweedy yarn, which I think is just perfect for this little guy. I have signed up to knit, well, I haven't signed up, but I am planning on knitting the December Advent gnome. So if any of you are going to be knitting the gnome, let me know. I don't think that the pattern or the colors or any of the suggestions have come out for that one yet, but in the summer there was some sales where you could get some of the, like, accessories for the gnome. So all I know is that I have ordered a pair of skis for my gnome. That's all I know. That's all I know. And even just the idea of knitting a gnome on skis is sort of exciting. So I'm looking forward to that, and let me know if you're knitting that one too. I have one last finished object off my needles, and this was a pair of socks. I was trying out a new heel, really. So I knit a pair of socks because you can't just knit a heel. This is a pair of socks from a collection by Summer Lee. It's called the True Crew sock set, and she does them in stockinette, 1x1 rib, and 2x2 rib. The heel that she uses is called a strong heel, which I've heard from a knitter since I cast on, that the strong heel is actually named after someone whose last name is Strong. So I thought that was interesting. And it is essentially, to my way of thinking, a Flegel heel knit from the top down. Let me show you what I knit. So here are the socks. The yarn that I used was Deep Stash. I had been needing to knit this yarn for a very long time. It is dyed by someone called Tiny Human Knits. She still dyes yarn, but this was back when she still lived in Alberta. She lived in northern Alberta for a time, and now she's moved to eastern Canada. I believe she lives in New Brunswick. This was called her Scrappy Sock Volume 2, I think. It is a 12-row repeat with these really, I don't know, cozy, soft colors. And I paired it with a pale gray for the toes and the heels. So let me just show you a little bit more about the construction of the sock. So you start at the top. In this case, I did the 2x2, and you just knit down to a certain point, which that point happens to be right here. And then you start increasing on either side of the heel, much like a Flegel heel if you were knitting it this way. So you'd be knitting it toe up, and then you get to a certain point in the foot, and then you start increasing along the foot. Okay, back to where we were. So I'm increasing here, and then you get to a certain number of stitches, and then you work short rows, similar to, again, the Flegel heel, or not so different from the bottom of a heel flap and gusset. You know, when you knit the heel flap and then you're doing the rounded bit of the heel, it's a very similar technique to that. But then once you get to the bottom, once you've used up all those stitches, then you're just knitting straight once you get to here. So that was really enjoyable, because once you sort of finish all of these increases, do the back and forth, and now here you're done. You don't have to do any decreases. Whereas in a heel flap and gusset, you would be decreasing away the stitches that you increased. So then I just knit to my usual length and knit a toe. I'm interested to wear these socks for a little while and see how I like the fit of them. I have a feeling that they're going to be very comfy, but the fact that they're 2x2 rib may not sway me from the heel. Obviously, if I like them in 2x2, then I like them in 2x2. But I'd also like to try this heel, I think, in a stockinette stitch, just to see the difference in how it feels on my foot and how it wears. But honestly, it was fun to knit. I enjoyed the process. I think it's interesting. Again, very similar to a Flegel heel, not difficult to learn. You just, once you sort of get the hang of it, it's super easy. And even working the stitches into the pattern, again, was very straightforward. As long as you're looking at your knitting, if you can read your knitting and know what a knit and a purl is, then it's not difficult. So these are the True Crew socks by Summer Lee, knit in the 2x2, and I used Tiny Human Knits. It makes beautiful, beautiful sock yarn, if you're interested. Now for Joline Spins a Bit. I have been spinning, I'm not sure if I showed you, I think I did show you this project already. Again, I am just using my drop spindle. The drop spindles I use were 3D printed by my husband. And I'm using, right now, I am spinning some BFL. This is my first time spinning BFL. Am I enjoying it? Yes, I would say I'm enjoying it. It's a little stickier, grippier, I would say, than Polworth, which was my previous spin, and maybe similar to Corriedale. So BFL might actually be a decent fiber for beginner spinners. I say that as a beginner spinner, but I do find it a little bit easier to spin than the merino that I have spun in the past. Polworth was not difficult to spin, it's just a little less grippy, that's all. So I have finished one ply, I guess. This is my little nugget of yarn. The yarn I'm using is by Pigments and Ply. I picked it up at a store in Seattle when I was there in the summer called La Mercerie. And I believe this color is called Hand Stitched Hems. So this is the first ply. It's half the yarn. And what I did was I took the braid and I divided it in half vertically. So I just pulled it apart. One half I spun end to end, which was this one. And then the other half I divided vertically again into 3 parts. And I am spinning those end to end. And what that's doing is giving me shorter color repeats on this one than this one. And I think it's probably hard to tell. But my plan then is to ply the two together in a fractal spin. I believe I'm getting that right. And we'll see how it looks. So I have another third, I would say, third and a bit of this fiber to spin. And I mean, spinning for me is just something that it's nice to do. It's a nice break from knitting. My hands sometimes get a little bit sore if I've been knitting too much. So switching to spinning just gives me a little bit of a break. It's just using different muscles and doing different things. Also, I'm finding that spinning with my drop spindle is very, very relaxing. You're just sort of, you get in a flow and you just kind of go. And it is relaxing. I think maybe because when I'm spinning, I do have to watch what I'm doing. I have to be a little bit attentive, but not too attentive. Whereas with my knitting, depending on what I'm knitting, I can just sort of check out. I can just knit straight if I'm just knitting stockinette. It's just something different, which has been really nice. So my spinning is coming along, and maybe by next time I'll have some yarn to show you. As ever, I have no plans for this yarn. I'm just looking forward to seeing what it looks like finished up. It is very autumnal though, and I think it's sort of why I picked this braid to spin right now. It just seemed very seasonally appropriate. So I have started a new project, and I was heavily influenced to make this project by some knitters at the Knit Night at Knit City, Vancouver. At our table, there was a couple of ladies who had both started on the same project. They had bought this beautiful yarn from Sook Yarn and Fiber. It is a DK weight Suri alpaca silk blend. And they were just making some very straightforward scarves. And I thought that looked like a great thing to do and a great way to play with some beautiful yarn. So we found this vendor in the marketplace on Saturday and picked up some yarn. My plan is to use this whole skein to make a scarf. And so I picked the sherbet bandana pattern. This is another free pattern by the Lamb and Kid. Again, it's a very simple pattern and easily adjusted for size. So I cast on. It's very skinny to start, and then you get to a certain point, and then you just start increasing consistently. So my plan is to knit this until I've used half of the yarn and then start decreasing. So it's already quite wide, actually. We'll see if I adjust my plans. But the sherbet bandana is quite cute. It's a small little bandana with a skinny end, and I plan, I think, to just knot this end, maybe like this. I think that would be kind of cute. But I'll let you know next time how I get on. If I end up knitting the whole thing or maybe just a part of it, I will let you know. But it's some very, very straightforward stockinette knitting. And I think you can see the really beautiful depth of color in this skein. So it is really a deep, deep brown with hints of purple, and it's called One Night Stand. This again by Sook Yarn, and it's just some very easy, straightforward knitting. The other thing I have on my needles is a new sweater, and this again is from yarn I purchased at Knit City, Vancouver this year. This pattern came out right before Knit City, and I loved it. It is called the Aussie V cardigan. There's a whole Aussie collection. there is a V-neck cardigan, a crew neck cardigan. There is a V-neck pullover and a crew neck pullover, and all of them have a long sleeve or a no sleeve / short sleeve option. So just a great collection put out by Tanis Lavallee of Tanis Fiber Arts. And I am using some yarn that I picked up from Sunday Fiber Co. This yarn is called Cory Wool, and it is listed as a sport weight, but I'm using it in place of the DK that is recommended for the Aussie V-neck cardigan, and I'm getting gauge. So this is a hardy, I guess, workhorse yarn maybe. It is a little, it's not the softest yarn, but I think once it is washed and I wear it a bit, it will soften up. Now the great thing about this yarn is, okay, so I've used up some of this yarn. It comes in huge cakes or skeins. So let me just show you the label. So Sunday Fiber Co., she always has beautiful yarn. This color that I'm using is called Dusk. And the Cory Wool is 100% Corriedale wool, wool and spun, 450 meters per 100 grams. And actually this label says that it is fingering weight 2-ply, but I'm knitting it up at a gauge of 22 stitches per 4 inches, and it's looking really good. So let me just show you what I've done. The this whole Aussie collection is a sweater with shoulder straps, if you will, so you knit a shoulder cap here and a shoulder cap here, and then you pick up stitches along the sides of those to knit the back and the front. Let me show you what I've done, and just know that it looks really weird right now, but it'll get better. So this is what I currently have done, and again, it's sort of hard to interpret what it is that I've done, so let me just walk you through it. Each of these shoulder pieces are cast on here and knit in this direction. So I have one on one side, and then I have one on the other side. And you can see those stitches are currently on hold. So they are on try-it-on tubing on each side. So this is just adding to the chaos of the sweater right now. There's just like things everywhere. So you knit those from the neckline out, and then you pick up stitches along the back. You cast some on for the back neckline, and you knit the back. Now that my back section is curling up quite a bit, but this is the whole back of the sweater to the armpits. And then you put all of this on try-it-on tubing. It's a little crazy at the moment. And then you go around to the other side of those shoulder straps, you pick up some stitches, and you work the fronts of the V-neck. I promise you that Tanis's instructions are very good. You won't get lost. It's just that at this point, I've sort of got some things everywhere. I've got stitches on hold at the ends of each of the shoulders. I've got all of my back stitches on hold, and they're rolling like the dickens. And then I have this left side of the cardigan that I'm currently working back and forth. Once I get this whole thing connected, so the left side, the back side, the right side, all like going back and forth, it'll be much smoother sailing. But for right now, it is a little bit fiddly just because I've kind of got pieces everywhere, but that's okay. I am making progress. And you know what, it's been quite an easy knit. There's nothing difficult about any of this knitting. It's just, you have to be comfortable picking up stitches. And the great thing is, Tanis tells you how many stitches to pick up, how many rows to knit, how many stitches to pick up, and what that means. So she says, I believe, pick up 3 stitches for every 4 rows along this edge. Or she'll say, pick up whatever it is. She gives you a rate. And that I find to be very helpful when you're doing these pickups and making it look as nice as you can. Now, this is a hand-dyed yarn, and I think you can see some variegation in it. I am currently using 2 skeins. They're huge. I think that you can agree. They're very generous skeins. So I'm using 2, and I knit 2 rows with one, and then I knit 2 rows with the other one, just to try and, again, prevent any real significant pooling. There will be variation in color. I am using hand-dyed yarn, and I'm fine with that, but I just don't want it to be super obvious or super flashy if I can avoid it. So as you can see, there is some variation, but I don't think that it's not, it doesn't bother me. I think it looks quite good, and I'm getting some pretty even distribution of the color, I think, by alternating skeins as I am. And all of this is, again, going to get easier once I have all of the stitches for the body on one needle, and I can just knit back and forth. Again, there will be much more, because I have more stitches, there will be more opportunity to blend, and you won't see less of that striping, I'm thinking. But the Aussie cardigan continues. My real motivation in knitting this is to try and look as cool as Tanis Lavallee does in these photos, here, here, or here. I just think she looks amazing. And because of that, I pretty much chose the same colors that Tanis did because I want to look cool like her. So I have 2 skeins of yarn, which I have not wound up yet. One is a blue and one is a red, and those will be my contrasting colors for the button bands. In fact, yeah. When I was at Knit City, my friend and I, who often do this, will pick the same pattern to knit, and so we're using very similar colors. I'm using Dusk as my main color, and she's using Dawn, which is actually the same dyes, according to the dyer. We were chatting with her. It's the same dyes, but just like one, like a variation lighter. So it's the same colors, but maybe the lighter version. And so we're going to be using the same colors on the button band. So we each bought a skein of the contrasting color, and I'll split them in half. She'll get 50 grams of each color. I'll keep 50 grams of each color, and we'll have enough to do our button bands and probably some left over at the end. But I think that this is going to be a really cute sweater. I plan on wearing it over top of t-shirts, but equally by itself, because I want to be cool like Tanis Lavallee. And that is all of my knitting the last couple of weeks. I am sort of ramping up now for November. I've got lots of knitting plans, and I'm not sure I should share them with you because sometimes all of my knitting plans seem a little bit ridiculous. But I have big plans to finish my Aussie cardigan this month because I think it'd be great as a layering piece. And continuing on with a bit of gift knitting and making some socks. The November Cuff Club patterns have just come out, and there's 2 of them, which means I might be knitting 2 pairs of socks for the Cuff Club this month. I have been trying to stay on top of them and knit all the patterns as I can. And I do have some colors picked out already for those patterns that have just come out. So look forward to seeing those in the next couple of weeks. Are you doing some gift knitting yourselves? Or are you just enjoying crafting and looking after yourself? I hope that whatever you're doing, it brings you joy. And I hope in the next couple of weeks you find time to do the things you like to do. I know I plan on knitting a lot. Please take care. It's been a super stressful time here, and I know we're not the only ones. So look after yourselves, look after your loved ones, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.